I was thinking this morning about being disqualified and disqualifying, because we've all been there. Some of us more than others, but we all have that tendency to either look at ourselves and disqualify ourselves, or remember the times when others have disqualified us, or disqualify others, even if we try not to do it, because there are just limits to what is acceptable. That may vary from person to person, but even people that seem to just accept almost anything still have a point where no more. That relationship has been stepped on too many times. It's, you're a traitor now. You have betrayed me or this or whatever too many times. And that's kind of that thing that comes back when the enemy or ourselves or anybody else throws the past back in our face. Remember, you did this, you did that. You no longer qualify for whatever. You're not worthy. You're not worth my time, my effort, my care, my concern, my whatever. And it's easy sometimes to slip into that when you're dealing with other people, When you reach out and your hand gets hit, how many times do you reach back out? And that's one of the things that I love so much about Jesus, because that's one of the greatest in many ways, that he's not like me. Aren't you glad? There is a God and I'm not it. And that's good for me. And that's good for this world. That's good for you, because I would not make a very good God. I have paid your debt this many times. You're still racking up bills. Tough love. We're done. Good luck. That's human nature. That's sometimes Christian human nature. I just not going to do it. Jesus called Matthew to be his disciple. We don't think that much about it today. Matthew was a tax collector, and we talk about him like that. He was a tax collector, and we have a tendency to have in our head this image of some sleazy IRS agent. That's bad enough, right? But that's not what a tax collector was to these people. See, the only people in Israel lower on the scale, more despised than the tax collectors were the lepers. That was it, the only ones. And they were actually less despised. They were more feared, but they were less despised, because at least the leper, it wasn't totally their fault. They couldn't help it. But the tax collector was a traitor. This was they collaborated with the enemy that invaded. They were the helpers of those who were keeping them in bondage. They had turned their back on their entire heritage and then fleeced their brothers and sisters over and above what the enemy was doing to them. How bad is that when you've got a conquering army come in and they're going to take pretty much everything from you, and then your brother helps them take more so he can line his pockets? There were no criminals in Israel that were more despised than tax collectors. They were the losers that were lost causes. There was no point. They were those folks that had gone the wrong way, become traitors, and then just had to go, well, I'm going to get as much as I can out of it because I can't go back. So I might as well just ride this thing till the wheels fall off and get as rich as I can while I go at the expense of everyone else. And it's easy to look down on somebody like that, but that's us. We have those areas in our lives where we have made a wrong choice or been damaged in some way, and we react or respond by choosing the wrong path, and we don't know how to make a U-turn. And if we try to turn around, we know we'll just fail, and people won't accept it. And they'll still remember that we took the wrong road and judge us, so we might as well just keep going that way and just take care of ourselves and get as much for ourselves as we can at the expense of anyone and everyone who may happen to be around. Traitors to the love that called us to being. And Jesus called him. And we like to talk about how Jesus hung out with tax collectors and sinners. That was probably a big part of that because Matthew said yes to the call. He didn't sit there and argue with Jesus and say, I'm not worthy. Why are you calling me to be your disciple? Don't you know who I am? I'm sitting at a tax collector's table. I'm the enemy. If you associate with me, you're going to ruin your ministry. You understand this, right? He said yes. And it was quite likely some of his co-workers and friends that get thrown into that tax collectors and sinners. It's a very real possibility that he was familiar with and known by Zacchaeus. You sing songs about Zacchaeus. But he was the chief tax collector. So Matthew quite possibly was under him. One loser being accepted by Jesus made it possible for other losers to go, well, you know what? If this Jesus guy can love this guy, maybe he can love me. We can't take Jesus out of any answer and solution and have anything left. But Jesus came and went to the cross on our behalf, and it doesn't matter how many times we've messed up. It doesn't matter how many times we've been offered help and turned away. It doesn't matter how many times we said, no, I want to do it my way. Doesn't matter how many times we've blown and squandered what he's given us. He's still saying, come. Come. Don't clean yourself up. Don't try to make yourself better. Don't try to earn your way back. Just come here. When he called to be a disciple, he never put qualifications on it. In any of the cases, not with Matthew, not with James and John, he never did an interview, checked their resumes, told them to go pack their stuff, make sure that they got their ducks in a row. He just said, hey, come. Follow me. And they dropped everything and followed. So the call for us today is to just drop it. Drop our own efforts. Drop our qualifications. Drop our disqualifications. Drop where we're good. Drop where we're bad. Drop what we've got to do. Drop everything and follow. And then by his grace, extend that to others. So that no matter how many times, no matter what in our heart and in our mind says you are no longer qualified, You are disqualified. There is no hope for you. Our actions and our spirit say there is hope because there is life and he's calling. I can list quite a few people who should have known, who have said, there is no hope for you to me. You will never get clean. You will never get sober. You will never get free. You will never be, fill in. And if all you look at is me, you're right, but God is able. God is able. Because Jesus went to the cross and traded his perfection for our imperfection. He loves us. People don't like it sometimes when I say it, but it's one of my favorite sayings. Jesus is for losers. So if you feel a little bit like a loser, celebrate, because Jesus loves us. And if it's the person you're dealing with that you can't help but go, then remember that Jesus loves them. Because he came and he did what we were always supposed to do and couldn't. And then he gave his reward for that, meaning life, because that's the reward for doing it right, to us in exchange for our reward for doing it wrong, which was death. It's not a fair exchange for him, but he chose it because he loves us. And that's why we can't cut him out of anything, because he is the love that proved his love by gladly and knowingly making the worst trade ever. So anytime we start thinking we're disqualified, let's remember who qualified us. It's not ourselves, it's him. And anytime we want to give up on somebody, or stop trying to help, or stop reaching out, let us join with the Spirit and say, come, because he hasn't quit. He died once for all. That means all time and all people. Even the ones who keep saying no, and you never know just how many times it may take before somebody says, you know what? Jesus loves me, and I get that now. We are no longer disqualified. Let us endeavor by grace and the love that Jesus gave us to not disqualify others.